Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Ruach HaKodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And back with some more headlines, a few important topics to get through today. And starting off here, we have an interesting bill. This is one here that, it is as it reads in the headline. It's a new bill here that opens the door, right, as it says, for killer AI weapons. Okay, and this is one of those bills where they, it's like the front cover says one thing, but the actual intent, is another. And how do we know that? Well, based on what's actually written in the bill, you can tell for yourself. So it says a newly introduced U.S. Senate bill would allow the military to deploy autonomous. Autonomous means that it's you can say it runs on its own, right? There's no external force or source that directs or controls said person, country, or thing. Okay. So it says here lethal, which is deadly, artificial intelligence systems by granting the Secretary of Defense the authority to override its own restrictions. And you'll see what that means here in a second. So Senate Bill S-4113, the AI Guardrails Act of 2026, introduced March 7th, 2026 by U.S. Senator Elissa Slotkin, is being presented as a framework to limit how the Department of Defense uses AI. And that's how it's being presented. What it's actually doing, that's the interesting part. So it says, but the actual text includes a built-in waiver mechanism that enables those same systems to be approved and used under national security justifications. This means a Pentagon-approved AI system could independently identify and engage targets, making life and death decisions without real-time human input. So, be it a drone, right, that is armed with a lethal weapon, a gun, whatever, if approved, it can have the leeway to make life and death decisions without needing a human to give the go-ahead. Okay? You have a hostage situation. Should you neutralize the target? Should you not? These kinds of things, they're now shifting to a point where that's what it means to be autonomous, right? Artificial intelligence, deadly systems we're talking about here, can have the jurisdiction or the ability to do so. Now it says there is no language in the waiver or in the waiver clause limiting where the system can be used, whether targets are foreign or domestic. And they do that on purpose. They didn't forget that. They do that on purpose because when there's ambiguity, there's always room for throwing whatever you want in there. Because you say, well, there's no clause in here that says, or no rule in here that says that you cannot do this. And so they do that on purpose. Okay. It says the bill has been, and that means that this can be very well used on American citizens under the guise of protecting, people because you may have threats, or domestic dangerous individuals in the country, and all manner of stories that they'll come up with. But it says here, the bill has been read twice in the Senate and referred to the Senate Armed Services Committee, where it now awaits further consideration. The waiver raises questions about how often extraordinary circumstances will be invoked. That's you can say like the password or passcode to bypass these limitations. Okay, so they introduce it by saying this is a bill to limit using the AI systems in this manner. So you think, well, perfect. AI is growing rapidly. We need to have guardrails on it. But within that same bill, you then say, well, except for certain extreme cases where we can override these limitations or these guardrails. Well, in a roundabout way, you're just saying that you're creating a way, you want a door, right? You want a door in to a world where it is possible to give the go-ahead for lethal, autonomous, artificial intelligence systems to be used on people, whether domestic or foreign. Right, so it says here, who ultimately decides when autonomous lethal force is justified and what meaningful limits, if any, remain once that authority is exercised. So let's take a look here at this part right down here. Waiver authority built into the core restriction, right? That's the point. That's the deceptive part. So the bill prohibits the use of artificial intelligence for launching or detonating nuclear weapons, domestic monitoring or targeting without legal basis. So what is being pushed or said by this bill is you cannot use artificial intelligence to launch or detonate nuclear weapons, right? You cannot use these artificial intelligence systems to monitor your citizens domestically, right? Or to target people without any legal basis. And you using lethal force through autonomous weapon systems without human oversight. You cannot use artificial intelligence equipped with lethal force to act independently without any human oversight, any human being to give it the go-ahead or stop it if need be. These are some of the things that are prohibited under this bill. However, as it says in this article, immediately after listing these things, follows, it says that the bill states the Secretary of Defense may waive the prohibitions for up to 1 year. And ultimately, that's the part that they really want. Okay? So the bill that is, or these prohibitions really don't matter. If the Secretary of Defense can just waive it, well, then what's the point of having the bill? It says here, and renew that waiver if extraordinary circumstances affecting the national security of the United States require the waiver. So, for example, you have a state of emergency, right? And in the state of emergency, there's an accelerated or elevated power or control that certain bodies of authority can have because it's a state of emergency, because they need these elevated access and control to make sure everybody is safe, right? But if there's not a state of emergency, they can't exercise those powers. Now, if you make the reason or basis on which they can declare a state of emergency ambiguous, that means they can declare it at any point in time for whatever reason, and then renew it and continue to keep it going, then even though you can sell it as, don't worry, they don't have these rights unless there's an actual emergency. And that's the only time they'll have this ability to do this, but it's because they need it to protect you. You may sell it as that, but in reality, what you're saying is somebody can come in office and say, I'm declaring a state of emergency, and that gives me all these extra powers and rights. And then I'm going to continue to keep us in a state of emergency. And I'm not going to declare it to be over. And then boom. Now I'm all set. That's kind of like what this is doing. You can't do this. You can't do that. You can't do this. But, if for the right cause, you can bypass those restrictions. So what if they come in and say, oh, you know what? Let's set up a false event. And let's say something had happened. Okay, bypass the restrictions. You waive the prohibitions and then renew it. And before you know it, the same bill that was supposed to do one thing is now being used to support doing the opposite. Yes, they operate that way. So next we have here, continuing on the main talk of the the town, so to speak, on this whole Iran U.S. war, which is quickly escalating into a wider war. You have here now Trump threatening make a deal before it's too late. Now, if you've been keeping your eyes open and not believing the propaganda of the Western media, you would know that a lot of the things they come out and say, Iran wants a deal, this, that, and the third, and so it's either 0.1% of truth, and then the rest is just fabricated, or just 100% fabricated. Okay, and Iran themselves will come out and confirm that and tell you, yeah, no, we didn't say that, or we're not doing that. Okay, so this guy at one point says, yeah, we did. It's looking great. Progress is going good. They think about this. They want a deal so badly. Right? They want a deal so bad. That's what he says. So then where from this kind of talk? Make a deal before it's too late. If they want a deal so badly, and you want them to have a deal, then what do you need to tell them to make a deal before it's too late for? That's a threat. It's like somebody that's very, very hungry. They're famished. I mean, you would give them a housefly and they'll eat it, right? And they're just that hungry. And you are somebody who's like, yo, I have this excess food and I'm trying to sell it. I'm just trying to give it away at this point. And you meet the person and now you're threatening the person. You better come and eat this food. If you don't eat this good 5-star meal right here, we're going to have problems. Oh, I don't think you even need to say a word. This person would have eaten a rat and they got a 5-star meal. Does it make sense that you would have to threaten them for them to take the food off your hands? No, it doesn't, right? Well, that's the situation you're seeing here. Trump threatens Tehran again as Iran/Oman draft protocol to reopen Hormuz, which that's not happening because they've already come out and said, just even right now, that strait is going to remain closed long term to U.S. and Israel interests. So while there are sources and reports saying that they are allowing certain certain ships to pass through, or tankers, the majority is not. So let's take a look at the summary here. World's most important oil price hits record high as Trump threatens Iran make a deal before it's too late. And it's very volatile right now because people, they hear what, this guy Trump will say one day, then the next, then they'll see what's happening in the world, and it's not lining up. And so it's going up, down, up, down, up, down. Oil drops on reports of Iran-Oman coordination to reopen the strait. It's not, what this is? This is when people are in denial. Because remember, these markets they're driven by investor sentiment. So when there's bad news, the way that people, move their money around or sell or buy certain, things causes the price, to go up, right? Markets to either have a bad day, good day, average day, so on. Okay, so they're being optimistic as best as they can. A lot of wishful thinking, even when the information is not looking good for them. They can't accept such devastating truth. So even though it's common sense by now that DJ Trump is not telling you the truth, they want to believe it when he says things like talks are going good. We want it to end. Okay. Iran issues Israel Gulf Logistics Hubs target. IRGC targets Amazon Cloud Computing Center in Bahrain. Now, here's the thing. If they start doing significant damage, okay, keep in mind that Amazon, you may not think that you are affected by them directly, but there's a deeper connection than you think, because the things you are affected by, a lot of it goes back to some company, and companies have run on software because we're in a technological age, and that software has to run somewhere, and that's where you have your cloud providers like Amazon and Microsoft and Google and so on. So when they start getting affected, you're thinking, oh, that's just some Amazon warehouse in the east somewhere. And then you wonder why the service you're trying to use is not working, because the service you're trying to use is built on top of Amazon's cloud infrastructure. So if Amazon is hit, you're hit. And if Amazon says, okay, we can still function, but we're losing a lot of money, we need to pass that on. By the way, when I say Amazon here, I'm not talking about the marketplace where you go Amazon.com, search for a product, click add to your cart and buy. No, that's one of their products. Okay, they have Amazon Web Services, where it's a completely different world in its own. Okay, So they start saying, we're getting hit, we're losing money. Guess what? We're upping prices. We start upping prices. Those whether it's, I don't know, a dental care website, freaking dmv.com, or what's that other, DOL, whatever website it is. If it's built on top of Amazon, they're gonna have to pay more money to keep their website up or keep their software running, and that's eventually going to be passed on to you. Okay, as you're already seeing, gas prices are going up. Your deliveries prices are going up as well. Amazon's prices are going up. Okay, U.S. intelligence assessments say Iran is not ready to negotiate. Oh, so what happened? Are we to believe that a couple days ago they were so willing to make a deal according to Trump, and now all of a sudden they're not ready to negotiate? Interesting. Given it believes it has the strategic upper hand and doesn't believe Trump is serious about talks. You don't say. Highest bridge in Iran connecting Tehran to and Karaj destroyed amid reports of expanding attacks on civilian infrastructure. Iran threatens port of Haifa in response. So you hit us, we'll hit you. You hit us, we'll hit you. You hit us, we'll hit you. Okay, that's how they're operating. And how do you then try to make a peace? What they're looking for here, which Trump came out in his speech and told you last night, it's not over. His job is to come in, like, it's literally, if you go back and watch press conferences from about maybe 6 years ago, when you had Fauci on the news everywhere, people saying this guy is a top expert, and Trump was in office. And he would be there in little White House press conference and stuff. And then they'll bring him up there. And his short ass will come there looking like a weasel and tell you about how, we have to mitigate the spread, try to get herd immunity and, really bend the curve, right? We want to bend the curve. And so, we're going to need to lock things down for about another 2 weeks. Hey, yo. Lock things down for another 2 weeks or whatever the case is over there. Guess what? That's the same playbook they're using here. Okay? The same playbook they're using now. Oh, 2 to 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. You know how long the 2 to 3 weeks lasted the last time they pulled this? Minimum 2 years. So you do the math and you see how long this 2 to 3 weeks that they're giving you here is going to last for this war, since they started saying that over a month ago. Anyway, it says here, UK's Starmer chairs a virtual summit over 30 countries to discuss methods of how to reopen Hormuz Strait. No mention of ceasefire, while vowing to keep hitting Iran extremely hard in Wednesday night Trump speech, escalating tit for tat overnight strikes. So basically what he did was he hit you with an April Fool's. Right? That's what he did. He hit the world with April Fool's, because a lot of people thought, because of certain comments that came out before, that he was saying that he's willing to, back off even if the Strait of Hormuz is not open. People thought that he was about to say, well, then we can call it a day, stop striking Iran, and just back off. No, he came on there and told you the opposite. He said, listen, bruh, this thing ain't over. Okay, it ain't over. Don't get your hopes up. Here you see here, it says Iran to attack logistical hubs in Israel Gulf after its tallest bridge destroyed, right, in retaliation for that attack on their civilian infrastructure. This is what I was just mentioning, April Fools and the Last Supper. Interesting here, which over here, I had the summary on here, but I was on my computer, so I have to just take a look skim through on here. April Fools and the Last Summer, and basically what this is going into is like what I just described, right? You had people expecting, right? Let's read that in the first paragraph here. I'm just gonna jump down to the main point. It says here, when news broke that Australia's PM Albanese British PM Starmer, and US President Trump would all be interrupting regular programming to speak to their people, reactions ranged from jubilant speculation that the war is about to end all the way through to nervousness that Operation Iranian Freedom was about to be announced. Yeah, clearly the war was not about to end, and that's what they have seen now, at least heard. Jumping to the third paragraph here, it says here, those moves are now revealed as an April Fool's rally. In fact, let me read that second paragraph. It says, judging by the price action in markets, the latter was certainly seen as the less likely of the two as stocks rose sharply across Asia, EMEA, and the Americas. While Brent crude briefly dipped below the $100 a barrel mark, Singapore gasoline spot prices fell by 22.7%, its largest daily move of the war so far. Those moves are now revealed as an April Fool's rally, as Donald Trump's address to the nation has sent oil bond yields surging, meaning that prices are going up. High beta FX lower, and early rallies in Asian stocks have now turned deeply negative. Once again, a lot of people are in denial. They don't want to accept the fact that this is going to continue to go on because it's a very concerning matter, right? Trump declined to announce that the USA is packing up and going home because they can't. They can't pack up and go home. And you have a lot of people that refuse to do research and learn what does it actually mean to be in this position the US is in. If they did, they would understand why they can't just pack up and go home. Instead, declaring that we are going to finish the job. Oh, are you now? I wonder what that would entail. You mean like a ground invasion? That's exactly what I mean. And if you think things are bad now, they're not. All right, at least not as bad as it's going to be. Next paragraph, Trump says there is still time for Iran to make a deal to end the war, but that the U.S. is willing to leave without a deal and will eliminate key targets on their way out, pointing specifically to Iran's electricity plants. What do you think he's saying here when he does that? When he says that, it's to say, oh, yeah, we're willing to leave, but before we leave, we're going to trigger you. So, and we know you're going to retaliate to that. And then based on what you do, we're going to decide whether we should come back and retaliate some more or not. Well, there's a difference between I'm going to leave, but I'm going to slap you in the face one last time before I leave, versus I'm going to leave, but I'm going to blow up your house and neutralize your family members while I'm at it, and then I'm going to leave. What do you think the opposing side is going to do to that? So that's what they're doing, okay? It's manipulation tactics. They say one thing, they do another. He reiterated his previously expressed timeline of 2 to 3 weeks to conclude operations in Iran. But markets will be nervous about that, as those timelines have a tendency to stretch. Yes, they do. See what else do we have here? Everything about this market is wild. European diesel foots top $200 as global scramble accelerates. All right, and once again, it hasn't even been 2 months, and this thing is the people are feeling the squeeze of this. Okay. The global tug of war for fuel looks set to accelerate, with traders scrambling to secure supplies even more aggressively after President Trump showed no signs of an end to hostilities and a reopening of the strait any time soon. The longer the Strait of Hormuz remains closed, the more intense the competition is likely to become. Traders have warned that Europe is at risk of diesel shortages in the coming weeks. You know what that means? It's going to mean forced regulation. The governments are going to say, look, it's not going to be fun, but we need to do something about this. And that means enacting measures to limit the use of energy because it's so low. And they don't wait till the energy runs out to do that, because then what are you saving? If the energy is run out, they wait, they let you know, hey, we're nearing an emergency state. So now we get to the point where you limit driving, your energy is rationed, your electricity is rationed, your gas, heating, all of those things. Okay? Everything about this market is wild, said Philip Jones Lux, a senior oil analyst. Europe is still short of diesel, but the situation in Asia is so much more acute that prices there are pulling barrels halfway around the world. Jumping down here, it says as Bloomberg reports, futures traded at as high as 14.98 a ton, dollars a ton, or more than $200 a barrel as they surge as much as 9.7% in London. Okay, so once again, it's these effects are being felt, but this is not the end yet. Okay, there's still a lot more. We reiterating some of the same points we just took a look at, right? And Trump's vow to, as he said, send Iran back to the Stone Ages. And somebody can go and ask him, how's that going for them? It doesn't look like it's going as according to plan as they would have hoped, but it's going somewhere, right? Trump declares core strategic objectives met. So if they're met, why do you need 2 to 3 more weeks of bombing? Iranian President Mossad Pezeshkian has released an open letter to the American people, questioning whether Washington is truly putting America first or merely acting as a proxy for Israel, willing to fight to the last American soldier. Now, the interesting thing is, a lot of people, or a good amount of people, they're privy to that, right? And also a good amount of people are not happy or in support of this war. So how do you get American sentiment, appetite for this war? They need to do something, because they're going to need numbers. They're going to need people. They're going to need troops. They're going to need people to be drafted. Okay? And if there's no sentiment, there's no appetite for this, sometimes it doesn't need to be being a gun-ho nationalistic, spirit. Sometimes it just takes pain that hurts enough that it triggers anger, and it triggers the desire for retaliation. Okay, and then they will gladly come and point you to who they are going to tell you was the cause of your pain, and all of a sudden now you're down to make them pay for it. Oh, we'll see how that goes with them. See what else we have on here. Air defenses have been activated in Dubai, taking out 5 ballistic missiles and 35 drones launched from Iran. Now, this is interesting here, right? This fourth bullet point about the new Ayatollah's tweet. Because he mentions in here, getting to the latter part, that their policy, their consistent policy of the Islamic Republic of Iran, jumping down to the last part of this, is to continue supporting the resistance against the Zionist U.S. enemy. So if they deem you an enemy and they're resisting you, that doesn't sound like they're trying to have peace with you. They're saying, look, we don't want ceasefire. You're not to be trusted. You're not trustworthy. We don't want a ceasefire with you. We want you to put an end to all this. Okay? Not true. Iran rejects Trump claim that the new regime president asked for ceasefire. That's interesting. It's very interesting, right? Let's see what else we have on here. IRGC has newly vowed to keep attacking with full intensity and power, suggesting this is far from over, as ceasefire talks remain theater, lacking in much substance. So you be the judge of what's really going on here, okay? And when you start to feel you start to get this hit, this gut punch in your wallets, a lot of people are gonna start to, you're gonna start looking around, because the only thing that's not gonna be going up is your paycheck. But everything else, your bills, expenses, blood pressure, cholesterol levels, all those, they're going to be going up right with it. Stress levels. Okay, meanwhile, you have here CEO of largest public hospital system says he is ready to replace radiologists with AI. See, for the longest period of time, the healthcare sector seemed somewhat immune to this AI takeover. And one reason being it was really the tech sector and certain business areas that AI was really looked at as being a threat to take your jobs. And one of the reasons was in the very beginning, artificial intelligence was looked at as that's why ChatGPT took the approach they first took, like a chat bot. You talk to it, it gives you information. You can use it instead of Google, those kinds of things. And then you had the introduction of like the agentic workflows, where now this artificial intelligence agent can do things, right? It can schedule meetings on your calendar. It can send emails, make phone calls. It can interact with the world, but still through a technological limitations, right? But as we start to see the shift and robotics starts to have its debut, right, which I'm using that very loosely because it's not a new thing, but it starts to step into the light as artificial intelligence did, and you start to see the fusion of the two. That's where you start to see the real threat, okay, of high waves of unemployment, because at that point you can have a human nurse, but you can also have an embedded artificial intelligence nurse. And this is one that now actually walks and talks and sees and can physically interact with the world with you. You can pick up a syringe, it can pick up a syringe. You draw blood, it can draw blood maybe more accurately. Its hands are more stable, more steady. It doesn't need a lunch break. It doesn't sneeze during a surgery. It doesn't have human errors. But it's not perfect, of course, but good enough to eventually make a case to say, wait, we don't necessarily need to cut the whole workforce, but let's start one or two here and there, see how it goes, and then start cutting numbers. Okay, so seeing stuff like this is just really just the beginning, right? And when you see the use of this technology, if you look back in history, you'll see it doesn't stay the same. It continues to advance more and more and more. So something that wasn't possible 3 years ago, it's possible now. And something that looks far-fetched today might not be in 6 months. Okay, so keep that in mind. This is Matthew chapter 24, verse 6. And ye shall hear, this is Yahushua prophesying about the signs before his return and the end of the world. And in this verse, he says something key, right? Ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. But the end is not yet. And now you're starting to see why he said that. Because we're seeing wars and rumors of wars. We've been seeing and witnessing that for years now. But you're seeing what else is happening as these wars and rumors of wars are taking place, which shows you why the end is not yet. Because there's still more to come before we get to the end. And at the end, I'm talking about thermonuclear destruction, which is a result of what we're seeing here. Okay, but there's some side effects of these wars and rumors of wars that are going to, fulfill other prophecies. Okay, but as the Lord told us, we have to watch. So that's pretty much it. I'm going to end it here. Lord willing, that was edifying and informative to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Racha Kodesh. And until next time, Shalom.